Okay, so one of the things that is really important is that we wanted to give you the opportunity to actually speak with other students and other staff and faculty who themselves actually identify as first generation. And so we reached out and were able to find a really amazing group of people that we want to be able to take the chance to introduce to you today. You hopefully have submitted your questions when you registered for the event at the beginning, but if you have any questions as they come up, absolutely, please feel free to drop it in the chat below. If you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, a little black tab should pop up that says chat. And so if you put something in there, we'll be able to go ahead and see that. And we definitely do want to take the time to make sure that we're able to address any and all questions that you may have today. But we do have, like I said, both faculty, staff, and students who are available for you. So I'm going to start off today with introducing actually our panelists today. So first off, we do have Waddell Blackwell. He has worked at ASU off and on since 1999 and has held positions of Student Services Coordinator for Barrett's, the Honors College, Advisor in the College of Teacher Education and Leadership, which is now the Mary Lou Fulton School of Education, Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. He also was the East Valley Recruiter for undergraduate admissions, the Coordinator of Enrollment Services for ASU Polytechnic, Director of Multicultural Student Affairs at ASU Polytechnic, Director of Student Rights and Responsibilities, and he currently serves as the Director of Student and Cultural Engagement for Educational Outreach and Student Services. So please welcome Waddell to our panel today. We also have for you today Joanne L. Martinez. She grew up in a small farming town of Parker, Arizona, which is located on the Colorado River Indian Tribe Reservation. She is the daughter to Chuy and Lupe Lopez and is the youngest of 5 siblings. And she's now married to her husband, Jose, and they have 2 daughters. Her worldview expanded when she attended Arizona State University, and she learned a lot about her community and social issues from her Bachelor's of Arts degree in sociology and her minor in Chicano studies. During this time, she was an active member of MECA, Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, and took on many leadership roles, including as chapter president and as regional representative for the national organization. As regional representative, she had the opportunity to visit other MECA chapters at multiple college and university campuses. And from this experience, she was inspired to learn more about the impact that higher education can have on a person in society. She continued her education at Arizona State University and completed her Master's of Education degree in the field of higher education. As a higher ed professional, Joanne has served many different groups of college and pre-college students at both Mesa Community College and Arizona State University. Her passion lies in promoting higher education and making an impact on future first-generation college students, their families, and their communities. Presently, she serves as Program Director for the Nina Mason Pulliam Legacy Scholars Program. She completed the Leadership and Innovation EDD program from ASU in May 2019 while in this position. And for her dissertation, she was able to assess the transition experience of students in her program through a qualitative phenomenological research study and is pursuing further action research on experiences of scholars in this program in an effort to better assess the effectiveness of programs with great impact. Please welcome today, Joanne L. Martinez. We also have for you today Yasmin Reyes, who grew up in Avondale, Arizona and graduated from Agua Fria High School. She was able to attend Arizona State University as a first-gen college student with the help of the Dorrance Scholarship Program and ASU's Leadership Scholars Program, and graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Family and Human Development in 2015. She is Mexican-American, second generation to live in the United States. Her parents are 1.5 generation as they immigrated from Mexico in their youth and are bilingual and bicultural. Identity has long been an interest in adulthood and struggle in childhood for Yasmin, often finding representation with the phrase, ni de aquí, ni de allá, translating to neither from here nor from there. Her career focus has been to help students succeed academically and pursue their post-secondary dreams through jobs with the Boys and Girls Club of the East Valley, Southwest Human Development, and now Arizona State University, where she has worked in the first-year student admissions team for almost 4 years. In her free time, Yasmin likes to spend time with her family and in her community, often finding volunteer opportunities whenever possible as a mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and completing the Community Leadership Course program with the Obama Foundation. Yasmin is pursuing a Master's of Education in PK-12, College and Career Counseling through Northern Arizona University. Please welcome Yasmin. And last, we have Christy. Christy Jerson Woods. Christy was born and raised in Colorado and made her first across-state move to Arizona in 2018. She has loved living in the desert. As a first-generation student, she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Counseling Psychology from Colorado Mesa University and completed some graduate coursework in counseling. Christy is currently completing her Master's in Educational Leadership from Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. She has worked in higher education since she was an undergraduate student through residence life and success offices, and is passionate about supporting student success. Currently, she is an academic success advisor for students in the information technology major at ASU. She is married and has one dog, Bella, a blue heeler cattle dog. In her spare time, she enjoys being outdoors, crafting, and spending time with her friends and family. Please welcome Christy Jerson Woods as well.
All right, and we also have some wonderful student panelists today as well. They're actually all success coaches at the First Year Success Center. But first we have Liz Rojas. She's a sophomore success coach getting her BA in business law, her BS in supply chain management. We also have Jackie Hope. She is a first year success coach getting her BS in anthropology, as well as public service and public policy with a focus in health policy. And then finally, we have Ivan Alcazar, sophomore success coach. He's getting his BA in political science. So thank you all for being here, and let's welcome all of our student panelists as well. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen, so that way when we move into the questions, you'll actually be able to see all of our panelists as they are responding. All right. And moving into our first question for our panelists. This is actually, we're starting with some of the questions that our students submitted. Definitely some common themes that we saw throughout these questions. So we're gonna pick a few. So one of the questions that we got that kind of covered one of the main themes we saw, did you ever struggle with classes or starting university as a first generation student? And if so, how did you overcome that for starting out?
I'll go first, and the answer is yes. This is Waddell, by the way. I'm quite a bit older than everybody in this room, probably. I'm in my early 50s. So I was in college before there was internet and before there was laptop computers. We had to type our stuff out on regular paper and hand in paper. So different environment. But I think what I struggled the most with is that high school was easy for me anyway. And it's a different mindset when you get to college. I remember when I used to work for Barrett's back in the day, I would tell students the biggest, and this was all students, the biggest thing you're gonna have to overcome is time. Because you're not gonna be spending 6-7 hours in class every day. You might spend 2 hours one day and you might spend 3 hours the next day. You might have an evening class. And then the rest of your time without your parents, you have to delegate time to study and to do your homework and read your books, while also being a young person who probably wants to be social and who has friends who wants to hang out with. And so it took a while to get that balance down, because I couldn't do a paper on Thursday that was due Friday and have it be a good paper. It just wasn't going to come that way. In high school, you could probably get away with that. So if I had to go back and talk to an 18-year-old Waddell or anybody else, is that understand that time is going to be a decent thing you're going to have to overcome, and make sure you understand that it fleets on you when you get to having a good time and having fun with your plans. And you're playing, and Arizona's got great weather too, so it doesn't, in October, November, when it's going to be fun to hang outside with your friends, Make sure you take care of your business before you get down to your business.
I can go next. This is Christy. Yes, I struggled. I didn't necessarily struggle my first semester. I struggled in spring, and I ended up failing 3 of my classes in spring. And in high school, I'll kind of echo what Waddell said. High school was easy for me. I would sleep in class and get an A in the class. I didn't really struggle in high school. So when I came to college, I kind of felt like I could still do some of those things. And some of my classes didn't require attendance. And so I used that to my advantage and didn't go to class, obviously. And so I missed important information about assignments and about projects that ended up being the reason why I failed 3 of my 5 classes. And I was there on scholarship for my grades, actually. So I was in a full ride situation, but I needed to maintain a certain GPA. So I was actually put on academic probation and then financial probation for my scholarship, which was the only way that I was able to attend college was through that scholarship. So I think then for me, it was more about time management. I really just was a social butterfly my spring semester and was like, other people are doing homework. I just want to hang out with friends and just that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to do any homework. So then after that, I really buckled down and used a planner, which I know people are going to be like, planners, but truly like I ended up having to schedule like my time slots every day. Otherwise, I would just get so distracted by the fun of college, which is cool, right? College is fun. You get to meet people, do new things. That's awesome. But ultimately, I think all that freedom ended up being what hurt me. And so I needed some more structure, and I had to be the one to put the structure in my life to make that work.
Hi, this is Joanne. So to remind myself, the question is on struggles, early struggles, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you struggle? And if so, like, how did you overcome that?
How to overcome it? Okay, that's the second part I missed. Hi everybody. When I came to ASU, I think one of the things that I realized is that because high school tended to be a lot easier. You know, you tended to receive a lot more of that individual support, and I think there was a lot more flexibility on the grading of your assignments in high school. I think one of the things I realized in college was that I didn't really understand my own strengths and my own study skills, like how I was. The ways that I studied best. And I think I realized that I didn't understand that. And so I was trying all of these different ways and learning from my classmates and my roommates and friends about how they went about to studying that. I never really first took the time to understand, okay, well, you know, what's the best way for me to learn? And so I struggled a lot with actually retaining information. So when it came to you know, taking, for example, multiple choice exams, where, you know, I thought I'd get by with just kind of understanding the gist of the information, I realized, no, I really had to learn the information a lot better than I thought I originally did. And so, you know, I think my approach was just kind of really going by it, really kind of just figuring out like, okay, if this didn't work for me, then I have to try something else. And I have to try something else. I did also as well connect with my faculty during their office hours and ask them, you know, hey, I didn't do as well on an exam as I thought I did, especially, you know, when I walked out of the exam, I thought I did much better, but I didn't. So, you know, what are the things that I need to do? And so they would really go over those tips and those recommendations with me. and really guided me. And because of that relationship that I was able to develop with them, like then they started providing a little bit more of that flexibility with me as well, you know, when it came to other future needs.
Would any of our current student coaches like to talk about this since you're living it at this moment?
Yeah, I can take this one. Hi, it's Yvonne. I think just to echo what Al said earlier, I think the biggest thing for me is time management. Oftentimes, like as a first generation student, you tend to be an overachiever or you tend to have other responsibilities. So for example, myself, like my parents like didn't really help me fill out FAFSA and stuff like that. And like I was responsible for a lot of my own living expenses. So I've worked since I was 16 pretty much, all the way up until now. I've taken classes, I've taken like 19, 21 credits and worked 30 hours a week. So the biggest thing is time management and figuring out what you have time for and what you don't have time for. So it might feel tempting to want to sign up for like 30 clubs and take 22 credits of classes and also have like a cool part-time job and all this, but definitely like think about like what you can and can't handle and plan your schedule that way. And the thing is like, you're just starting college too, right? So there's no need like the pressure to have to try to do everything quickly. Like if you're interested in you know, having like maybe a part-time job or joining a club, try joining like one club and try like one part-time job, you know, like 10 hours a week or something as you're getting acclimated to like the classes that you're taking. And the thing is as well, like with an institution as large as ASU, the thing is there are a lot of resources out there, but you might not necessarily know they exist. So you kind of have to be your own advocate and do some of the footwork on your own. Like if you're having trouble with it in like a calculus class, type in like calculus ASU math tutoring. Like if you Google that, literally the ASU webpage for that pops up. So the thing is that one of the things that you'll learn like is self-efficacy, like being able to do these things on your own and kind of figuring it out and getting connected, because like the help is there. Like once you find like the ASU math tutoring, for example, like you go there, people are like, oh yeah, thanks for coming, like let's help you. So just figuring out how to navigate that, like what they were saying earlier, right? Without your parents being there to like, oh, first you do this and then you do this. And that's another challenge, right? As a first-year student, your parents might not really know how to navigate like a university ecosystem. They might not say, oh, just go find like the tutoring department, you know? They'll just be like, oh, okay. So definitely understand that there are a lot of challenges, but there are also a lot of resources at ASU to help you overcome them specifically.
I'll go next. My name is Lisbeth. I think one of the things I struggled with the most was understanding that you don't have to do everything. Meaning like coming in, I already thought I was behind. I'm a business student, so everyone in the business school, we're typically like having like, oh yes, I've had experience with this, this, and this. I have an internship lined up with this, and then I'm gonna do this, or just things like that. And I was like, well, what am I doing? And I was understanding that like we all have a different path, and you don't have to compare yourself with others, because obviously I'm a first generation student. My parents didn't go to college, so I'm already at a little bit of a disadvantage with that, because I can't ask them. But like Yvonne said, there's other people that are willing to help you. So for me, it was understanding that it's not a race between you and the people around you. You kind of have to form your own path and realize what you want to do for yourself. And the people around you are there to help, but again, they're not your competition, because at the end of the day, no two people are the same, and you probably don't want to end up doing the same thing that they're doing.
And going off of what Liz and Yvonne were talking about, hi everyone, I'm Jackie. But basically the whole idea of comparison and also time management, because I went into my freshman year of college, I was taking 21 credits, I had an internship, I had a job. My time was spread very thin because I was always comparing myself to other people. I was like, oh, but they're doing this, they already got a paper published, blah, 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 blah. But then I just got exhausted to the point where I did burn out. And I think the first time I withdrew from a class, I literally cried. Like some of you, like I know it's not a big deal and we all end up having to withdraw from a class or having to ask for help. But I think it's really important to communicate with your professors. I know that some people are very intimidated by them, but if you don't express your concerns and what's going on with your life, then they won't know, right? And it's clear to have that expectation because they understand that you're human and they understand that you have things going on in your life. So what I try to do is comparison only into the idea of how I can use that to motivate myself rather than to feel bad about myself. Because as a first generation student, I always felt like I needed to do more. And if I wasn't doing enough, I was like failing my family. But the idea is do what makes you happy and do what you can handle, because if you burn out, it's not going to be beneficial for you or whatever goals that you have or are supporting.
Awesome, thank you. We're gonna move to the next question, but I definitely wanna say, like, based off all of the answers that you just provided, one of the big things is just being able to normalize asking for assistance. You know, understanding it's 1000% okay to say, hey, I need help right now, because all of our first generation journeys are going to look completely different. You know, whether it's the resources we're using or our background or where we're planning to go next, like everything's going to look different for us. So it's absolutely always okay for us to be able to ask for help from anybody, whether it's our peers or faculty and staff that you see around you at any given moment. So some of the next question then that we have, kind of just based off of what you discussed here already, was you mentioned, you know, feeling pressured, potentially being first gen. How did you manage that feeling, and what really helped you as a first gen student manage that?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So yes, that pressure is really difficult to navigate, especially as a first generation college student. I think one thing is to acknowledge that, like we're all sharing, we all had all these ideologies of who we were. We thought we could work hard and get it done, and that like that enough would be able to help us achieve success. But the pressure comes when we don't face the reality of what we are capable of doing and not finding those resources to help move us forward. So for me personally, like a lot of people have shared, in high school, it seemed pretty normal for me just to work really hard and I would get the A and like move forward. But in college, it was a whole different game. It was like there was a rubric, but I didn't understand how the rubric was going to be used. And like there was no rubric that I could see that everyone else could see, and I felt really like lost and confused. I was in Barrett the Honors College my first year, and I was like, I've never read these titles, I've never even heard of these titles or these authors, and I feel like, why am I here right now? I shouldn't be. And I started to get this really bad case of imposter syndrome of like, who am I to be in this space with people who have had all these things that have helped them get to college, where I don't even know the first thing of how to succeed. And then it just, this pressure continued to build on top of itself to the point where I did fail one of my classes my second semester at ASU. And that was because I couldn't acknowledge that I needed help. And I actually had my scholarship coordinator sit down with me and say, okay, what do you need from us so that you can succeed? We don't want to kick you out of this program, but we want you to know that we have resources for you, not only at ASU with like the free tutoring center, but the coordinator started meeting with me monthly. And that really helped me to hold myself accountable, because I would have to confront, okay, I didn't study as much as I should have, or I didn't make enough time the way that I should have to get all the tasks done that I needed to. And for me, having that accountability to someone else helped me a lot to say, okay, that person's not going to judge me. They're truly there just to help and support me. So to tell them, I feel like I'm failing, and they could reassure me, like, you're not failing, but you do need to do other actions in order to get to that goal of completing your courses. So that really helps me to be able to, sometimes what I say is like, you can't overcome something you can't name. So I didn't know that I was feeling imposter syndrome. But when I talked to my coordinator, she's like, oh yeah, you know, that happens a lot with the students in our program because they're first generation college students. They feel this pressure, they feel like they don't belong, and they question their reasoning for being there. So being able to name something, I could then when I thought about those thoughts again in class, I'd be like, okay, this is just imposter syndrome. I can name it, now I can get over it, and that can help me kind of move forward. So those little things helped me throughout.
Does anyone else want to touch upon it? Or even we had a question on the side. Were you ever worried that you wouldn't pull through from all the stress?
I kind of want to share on that. I feel that stress is going to be continuous. Like it's not something that you're going to get over like overnight. I'm a senior now, and I still kind of feel that pressure of not letting my family down. I think that's my biggest pressure now. And it all stems from comparisons, again, from what other people are doing. And it personally took me like breaking down, crying, and having to go home like one weekend because I just couldn't take the pressure anymore, and finally asking my parents for help. And I think that was my biggest fear, like letting my parents know how much I was struggling, because I didn't want them to feel I couldn't take like college on. But at the end of the day, they were super supportive, and I think that was something of a stress reliever for me, because then I know that they're already proud. And like they explicitly told me like, we're already proud, like you got this far, like you've gotten this far. If you want to quit at this point, it's okay, because you already did more than like what we do. And basically what they told me, it's like, but we know you're not a quitter, so we know you're gonna push through. So it's knowing that you have that support, and sometimes like you know it's there, but you don't ask them for that like constant reassurance, which also helps. So don't be afraid to talk to the people that love you and care for you, because at the end of the day, those are the people that you'll turn to when you need something, or when the stress just gets too much to you. It's better to just vent it out at one point than just constantly like keeping it in, and then at the end it's gonna not work out the way you wished it would.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo exactly what Liz has said. Like there's a reason why people say like it's called like managing stress, not like curing stress, because stress is like a lifetime, like ongoing thing that will come and go and wax and wane through various different things that you go on to do in life. So definitely learning, I think one of the things that like I had a hard time that I like recently, like I'm also a senior, like recently just learned to overcome, was like the feeling that you need to like handle everything by yourself, because like your first gen, like one of your strengths is that like you're really capable and you know how to handle things by yourself. But like a lot, you know, the converse of that is that like you're also like, you also tend to not like share these things with other people. Like you don't share the fact that you're feeling stressed, or that, oh, you're overwhelmed, or you're tired, or you have anxiety, or you're feeling these things. And so it's like you don't have to carry these things like all the time by yourself, and you don't have to keep these things to yourself. Like it's okay to talk to people and ask people for help and share these feelings, and recognizing, you know, what you're feeling, because that's like really important as well. I think Yasmin was talking about there, you can't like overcome what you can't name. You know, sometimes like you really do have to sit down and like, hey, I'm feeling really tired and stressed, like, and admitting that, and that's okay. Like feeling stressed and tired or feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean that you failed, or doesn't mean anything. It just means like this point in time you have a lot in life going on, and that's okay. So just recognizing that is the biggest thing, and figuring out like how you can get the help that you need in order to kind of push through what you're going through. Like ASU has counseling on campus that you can go to, and the first consultation is like free. So you can go and have this conversation with someone like on campus, for example. And if it's not, you know, if you don't feel comfortable going with the counseling on campus, if you have like a friend that you can talk to, or some family member that you can kind of share like what you're going through, even just kind of venting and saying these things out loud can really help relieve some of that. So just know that you're not alone, and that you don't have to deal with your problems and stuff alone, and that there are people out there that are kind of ready and willing to help you and give you the support that you need to succeed. And I guess to that other comment, like worry that you wouldn't pull through. I think there was a moment like that, but at the end of the day, like you really just have to kind of keep on believing yourself, like believing in yourself, and the fact that like you're in college for a reason, like you got accepted for a reason. And if you if you have scholarships, awards, or whatever, like you got those things for a reason. And, that's because other people believed in you, whether it was the university or the person that gave you the scholarship or the academic program that you're in, like whatever the reason is, like you were there because someone believed in you and believed that you have what it takes to succeed and go on and do something great. So you just got to kind of keep on believing that and don't really like allow yourself to feel like, oh, I'm not going to make it. I can't do it. Like if you keep pushing and you do your best to like, ask for help when you need it and not feel ashamed to go like and get help for the things that you need help with, whether it's tutoring or whether it's counseling or whether it's like seeing your success coach or seeing career services because you need help with your resume. Like all these things, like we have people there and resources there to help you and you're not alone. So you don't have to deal with everything alone. Like it's okay to get help because ultimately like that's what's going to help you like succeed and keep going.
I have a story that's a little bit different. So even though we grew up poor, I'm talking like, poor as poor can be. My parents always made it seem like college was to high school what high school was to middle school. So it wasn't like it was a choice. It's like you're going to college. It's just a matter of how you pay for it. So I think having gone through the stress before I got there helped a lot. And FYI, I've been playing point guard in college, so I got to school on an athletic scholarship. And so I was confident that I was going to be able to stay because it was, hey, I'm going to go to high school again for another 4 years after high school. It's going to be the same thing. So once I got past the initial stuff we talked about, that I talked about earlier, I didn't know if the school that I got a scholarship with, I didn't know if I wanted to go back after my first year. It was, okay, the experience was okay. I had a good time and whatever, but I just didn't know if I really wanted to go back for a second year. I was away from home in a different state, missing my friends and, having relationships with my high school first love and all that kind of stuff. And so my dad said, well, if you're not going to go back to school, you're going to get a job. And by the way, I'm from Tucson. And ironically, that summer, I got a job working outside. And that summer ended up being one of the hottest days in Arizona history in Tucson, which was 120 degrees. The motivation was suddenly re-energized, and I was graduated from school in 3.5 years. So it was just, I tell young folks every once in a while that when you have the pressure that you want to go and you can go, you don't know how you're going to get there. And then when you figure out how to get there, it's like, well, everything else I think is going to be, I can do the work. I can put in the time. I can avail myself. And I just marvel at all the resources you all have now, like career services. I'd have been like, what's that? Student government, what's that? It was basketball, food, and rest, and then homework and school is all it was. It wasn't anything more than that. So I'm glad you all are able to avail yourself of all these wonderful undertakings, because when I went to school, the focus was so narrow. And by the way, I also majored in the wrong thing. I majored in business. I should have been an education major or a philosophy major, but that wasn't in vogue at the time. It was business. And it's like, I couldn't give a dang about that. But when I got to higher ed, I got a master's degree in education, way different GPA, way different interest level, way different, you fill in the blank. So it's, I'm so happy to be a part of what you all can avail yourself to in reference to resources and individuals you can come in contact with, and just things like this that are going to put you ahead of the game, because once you're done, you make sure you pass that on to your niece, nephew, eventual sons and daughters, and in some instances, your mother and father, if they want to go back to school, you can educate them on financial aid and all those things. And that's just something you either got to pay forward or pay back.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to answer this question before we move on? All right.
I would.
Okay.
Okay. I think a really important note to do with stress is that it's something that you should actively work on. And I think when I ask a lot of my students as a first year success coach, like, how do you de-stress? How do you relax? A lot of the times they just look at me. They're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean, how do I relax, right? Because for everyone, it's different. Everyone, like, you can have this idea of self-care, but it's all about what makes you feel happy. For me, it's like taking a nap. It's nothing extravagant, but it's something that I deprived myself of for a really long time, right? And I felt guilty for taking naps when I could be doing productive, because as a society, we do push ourselves to be constantly productive. And what I like to remind you guys is especially when you're first generation student and you're feeling that pressure and you're feeling like you constantly have to do something or be productive, you also need to take time to care for yourself. So ask yourself, how do you de-stress? How do you relax? Because if you don't actively take time to take care of yourself, then things aren't going to be as great as they could be, right? Because if you don't take time to go to sleep or drink your water, it's going to end up hurting you more in the long run. So I know that people always say like, oh, I don't have time to relax, or I don't just have time to like work out, but it can just be like little things like making sure that you're eating breakfast or going on that walk for 5 minutes when you feel like overwhelmed. Because I think in the long run, those little steps that you take every day can help you from feeling like you can't accomplish the things that you want to accomplish.
Thank you, Jackie. All right. So one thing I noticed everyone kind of mentioning in their responses was one, asking for help, right? So advocating for yourself and just the relationships you have, right? Whether it's people you're connecting to about school or beyond school, right? So I wanted to ask our panelists, what did it look like for you, or what does it look like for you now in terms of building a community of support? And what advice might you have for our students in the room in terms of taking those first steps or continuing building that community of support for them?
I'll go. So for me, my community support was the student organization I was involved with, and finding not just peer support, so those from new friends that I made, but also from the mentors who worked very closely with us in the organization. And a lot of what I learned about how to be better as a student, I learned from those who were a year or two ahead of me. And they really guided me not just on academics and which classes to take and opportunities to take advantage of, but also in regards to leadership as well. I was able to learn a lot from them as far as like how to critically think about issues, how to take a stand on stuff, and how to address issues that were local to us, whether it was our family or our immediate communities. They were really my support system in really helping me grow as a student. And so I'd say that because of that, as it was said in the introduction that I had, because of that, my worldview just kind of like really opened up and allowed me to see things in a different way as a result of all of the different perspectives I was gaining. So, the more I was involved with my organization, the more I learned about other resources throughout the university and connected with so many more people, and it just kind of grew exponentially from there.
I'll go. So something that I did was reach out to a mentor, or who I wanted to be my mentor. I decided pretty early on in my undergrad that I wanted to go to grad school, and I kind of had this idea that I needed to do a lot in order to get into grad school. But I hadn't really made any connections with faculty or anything like that. My school is a lot smaller than ASU, but still, like, you can easily not make relationships if you don't want to. So I decided that I needed a mentor, and so I just took a look at my faculty that were doing things that I wanted to do. And for me at that time, I wanted to be in counseling. So I looked at faculty who had a counseling background and, kind of made a pro and con list about who I thought would be a good mentor and why. And I actually, the first time I met my mentor, I said, "Hi, my name's Christy. You don't know me yet. I've never taken a class with you, but I think you've got something great, and you've got some great experience, and I would really love it if you'd be my mentor." And of course, my faculty at that point was like, what? Because it's a little confusing, since they had no idea who I was and who, and I barely knew who they were. But I think that, that opened up a lot of doors for talking with that faculty about what it is that I needed from mentoring, what my goals were in the future. And because of that, I was able to have a lot more opportunities. Like, she needed a TA, and it wasn't like a posted job somewhere that anybody could just apply for. She was like looking for a specific person, and then ended up asking me to be her TA. And in the long run, that ended up that she was one of my recommendations for graduate school. So sometimes I would say that it's about taking risks and advocating. I think it was Yvonne that said advocating for yourself and self-advocacy. I think that there's a lot to that, because from my experience, it wasn't somebody showing me, okay, this is what you do now, this is what you do then, and you need to talk to this person, this person, this person, because my school didn't have those resources. It was, again, a smaller college. So I ended up creating my own resources and really seeking people out. And I still think you can do that, and be curious about what's out there, and be committed to finding something that's going to help you.
Any of our other panelists also like to comment on the question? Okay, so in that case, we have someone else who submitted a question when they registered, and I really like this question. But what is the first emotion or feeling you get when you think of first generation? Whether it's for college or just your personal stance as a first generation, what is the first things that come to mind for you?
I think for me, it's definitely pride. And, you can talk about whether that's a good or bad thing. But I guess just thinking about, like, I guess where my family came from versus, like, what I have the opportunity to do now, I definitely feel proud. And the fact that, like, I didn't have, I guess, the same resources or advantages that some other people might have. For example, like I'm looking to go into consulting now, and I'm applying to McKinsey & Company and Bain & Company. These are really prestigious companies. I didn't even know what consulting was when I started, because my parents didn't go to college, and I didn't really know anything about the types of jobs that were out there. Like, when my mom went to school in Mexico, she like walked to school. She had one uniform that she washed every single day, So it's like thinking about like what my mom had access to versus what I have the opportunity to do now, and what the resources that I have access to now, like, definitely makes me feel proud, and makes me feel pride in the fact that I'm able to do what I'm doing now, and kind of it helps drive me forward.
This is Joanne. So I agree. For me, it's very much the same. So I won't add more to it, other than, like, there's a specific person that comes to mind, and that is my dad. So I remember, having deep conversations with my dad, and him kind of putting this on me, and he did with all my other siblings as well. It's like, well, we expect good things from you, and so it was a conversation that could make me go to tears, but definitely that is the thing that I think of as first generation.
For me, the word that I think of is grateful. I mean, for a while I wasn't, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, we talk a lot about comparison, and I always think like, oh, if I grew up like upper middle class and I had these opportunities, and if I had someone to guide me. But I feel like that mindset was being more counterproductive. And it wasn't until I had this conversation with a professor after I was kind of like slipping and my grades weren't doing as well. And I just felt honestly unmotivated because there was just so much pressure. I was like, what am I even really working for? And I know I have this great big picture of wanting to care for my family and provide and give back, but I think sometimes I just like lost track of it because it can just feel like so daunting because that's a lot of pressure, right? So it wasn't until I had a conversation with my professor who looked me straight in the eye and just said, Jackie, like, you should be proud of working for everything that you have. Like, that's something that not everyone can say, and that's something that you should be really proud of. And she's like, telling me how a lot of people like her who came up from a disadvantaged background and humble backgrounds had to work for what they had in their life, right? And it made them more appreciative and grateful for their opportunities. And it wasn't until I had that conversation with her that I realized that it's okay that I don't have everything figured out, and it's okay that I was struggling because I'm still learning. And she told me that it's not about how these obstacles define me, but how I was able to use these obstacles to create opportunities that other people wouldn't have. So it's very important to recognize that, oh, maybe being first generation is a lot of pressure, maybe it's a lot of things, but think about how all of you have created all these opportunities. You're obviously at college, that's amazing. And you're going to build something for yourself that maybe your family didn't have in the past, and that is so inspiring, and you should be proud of that.
I'd probably say, to echo on that, no matter what trials and tribulations you go through, you belong. You belong. I've heard that a lot in this meeting today, where folks didn't feel like they may or may not belong, or that they're out of their league. You belong here just as much as anybody else is. And for somebody that doesn't know your background or your history or your struggles that it took for you to get here, that's irrelevant. And as obviously a lot of you, I speak of things from a sports perspective a lot. It's like when I hear people talking about athletes who are 6'5", 300 pounds, who are given a free ride scholarship. It's like, that dude's a 4.0 engineer. It's like, you have no idea what that young man does. He goes to, he plays on his team 20 hours a week. He studies 20 hours a week, and he's a civil engineer. So don't try to tell him that he doesn't belong simply because you think he's a football player who is here because he's a football player. He happens to be a football player, but he deserves to be here, or she deserves to be here just like anybody else does. And I want you all that are students that are doing this, keep your head up and keep your perspective. You belong here, or you belong anywhere else for that matter. You happen to choose ASU for a variety of reasons. We're so happy that you're here, but don't let anybody get in your way. You deserve to be in this spot where you are today.
Can I just say, I am loving this energy. We also wanted to open it up to all of you students who are attending. What are your thoughts when you hear first generation? Maybe your thoughts have changed just in the last 20, 30 minutes of this conversation, getting to hear our panelists speak. Maybe you've been able to kind of take something out from what they've been able to say, or just the information we've been able to provide. But if you, as a guest of this presentation, feel comfortable unmuting yourself or popping into the chat, what are your first thoughts when you think of first generation?
Okay, I'll go. Okay, so I think of new opportunities, new beginnings, and I think of, had a word in my head, just flew away. Oh, impact. I feel like with new generation, I feel like we're making, an impact that's gonna last, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. Impact is huge. Like, you're making an impact in your own life, but anybody else who's coming up after you, you're making an impact for them. Or even was mentioned earlier, if your parents go back to school, now you are a source of sort of inspiration for them. My mom and I were going to school at the exact same time for a bachelor's degree. And so I was looking at her for inspiration. She was looking at me and she's like, you're doing it. And I'm like, and you're doing it. So like that impact is a huge part of being first generation for basically anybody that you get to encounter. Anybody else like to share their thoughts now on what do you first think of for first gen?
I would like to share. Sorry, no, I'm not a student right now.
Yasmin, come in.
I think after this, if all of you could just remember, you're not alone. I think that's the one thing that I felt as a first generation college student so much. And like, no one understands what I'm going through, and I'm only me in this world, and no one knows me more than me. So no one can empathize with who I am or sympathize with what I'm feeling. But that's what separates us and doesn't help us like move forward, I think, is that feeling of loneliness and people don't get me. And I once did a survey for 60 students that graduated as Latinas or Hispanic backgrounds, and reading their responses of how they felt as a first generation college students made me cry, because I felt identified. I felt like, oh wow, other people were feeling the way I was feeling, and like 60 other people were feeling that way at the same time. Like there is this support, there is this community. All of you now know each other by names, screen names at least, and you know that there are faculty members that have gone through what you're going through. So if at any moment you do feel overwhelmed, know that you have people to listen to you, and even that validates so much of what you're feeling. And I think that's really powerful and really important, that I wish I would have known I could have utilized as a student.
Absolutely. We've got some people in the chat just saying how nice it is to know like they're not the only one feeling the emotions they're feeling, you know, feeling validated in a sense to, you know, everyone in this room is most likely first generation. Like look at this little community right here on your screen that's available to you because you all decided to register for this event. You've got faculty and staff from diverse backgrounds who hopefully you maybe see yourself in, or you're like, hey, this person's also doing it. Like I can do that, they've done it. So it's nice to feel validated and know like you're not alone in your feelings here. We also had someone drop in the chat an actual link to a first generation club on campus. Ellen, I just want to let you know we did give you a shout out earlier, like specifically the Watts group. There are also lots of other great on-campus first-gen groups as well that are still expanding. Ellen pointed out hers just started for Watts. So ASU is consistently trying to build something, and not just ASU, but the students have seen the need for first-generation support and are building that support for themselves and being that advocate for themselves.
So I'm going to throw out a little bit of research if anyone is interested in it, because I'm a higher ed professional and I love theories. I would recommend that if you're really interested in kind of learning a little bit more about yourself and the experience that you're going through, you know, look into at least two theories. One is a theory of validation by Dr. Laura Rendon. And the theory of validation pretty much addresses a lot of experiences that many of you have been sharing today about how it's important to validate the experiences of like first generation students such as yourselves going through this experience in college. And the other that I would recommend as well is transition theory. And transition theory is by, I can't remember her first name, but Schlossberg is her last name. And so this talks about at any phase of your life as you're going through a transition or perhaps even a non-transition, you know, understanding kind of how you can cope with the changes or the non-changes that are going on in your life through, you know, through four aspects to look at. And so if you really want to just kind of help yourself understand, and I'm sure that there's like handouts that kind of condense all of these two theories, so you don't have to read the entire journal article about it, but see if there's something that you can search on it to help you kind of just better understand yourself. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that kind of wraps up our formal questions for our panelists, but does anyone have any last minute questions that they would like to take the time to ask? After this, we do also have an activity for all of you folks. The fun doesn't stop after the panel.